Okay, so Ayin Beis, we're up to chapter 71, page Kuf Lamed Beis 132. It's the last chapter in the Rosh Hashanah Tafresh Ayin Gimel Maimer Discourse 18. So, what we've done so far is we've gone now in the last two chapters into an in-depth analysis of his bonanus and contemplation and meditation on Boruch Sha'amar, the beginning of Pesukah D'Zimra. Pesukah D'Zimra technically begins with Baruch Shamar or with Haidu? Or after Baruch Shamar? Or Ashrei?
Ashrei is a slide. Ashrei starts with Baruch Shamar.
Anyway, Baruch Shamar. And essentially he's spoken about 5 stages, and which he's now going to continue discussing. And we also compared it, comparative studies, we'll call it, to Sharei Tshuva, or Sharat Tefillah in the book called Sharei Tshuva from the Mittler Rebbe, chapter 7 and on. And briefly, it's about the picture, the imagery, for lack of a better word, the evolution from Ein Sof to existence. Now, the context of everything till here has been immanence and transcendence, Pnimiyah Makiv. And the context even of this is still in the middle of the discussion how transcendence impacts us. Remember, all this, let's not forget, there's a point of departure here. The point of departure is that after explaining the effect of Tiri La, the effect of Tiri Tata, the effect of the Makiv Klali before the Tzimtzum, Makiv Klali after the Tzimtzum, which are the desires, the overall desire that transcend and encompass all of existence. Then explaining the Makiv of Kesher Vatzilus, how it impacts the soul, he starts a discussion on the Makifim of Bria, Yitzir, and Asiyah. Begins with being that's Hashem L'kim Racham Aleinu, Adeinu Zenu, so on. That's going to be at the end of Pesukah D'Zimra. Then, before you go to Shema, B'chus Yetzer, and to go that, he went back to Baruch Sha'amar. But it's all the process of everything he's been discussing of how from Ein Sof comes into a defined existence, with the goal of explaining how that Ein Sof impacts existence as it travels through the levels. But we're speaking Makifim primarily, not Pnimi. So what are the 5 steps? The 5 steps is like this. Ein Sof is an amorphous, nebulous, seamless field of energy. It's God's consciousness, divine consciousness. Not that we're conscious of it, but it's conscious of God. Or it's God as God expresses in some form of higher consciousness. I would really call it God's unconscious, to be really more precise. But it's not. It's not. Atzmus is not even unconscious. Here, at least, you have an unconscious, which is the beginnings of what's going to later become consciousness. Okay, you could even call it unconscious, but it's whatever it is. It is not pure Atzmus that you can't even call anything. So Eir Ein Sof. This is when we say Eir Ein Sof. The Eir itself is Ein Sof, not Eir Shel Ein Sof, as he explained. Okay. This Eir, as we spoke about, is Me'in Hamoyer. It's expressive of the essence. All it is the essence. Has nothing of its own. Okay. So it's not Atzmus, but it's also not nothing else. Step 1 is Baruch Sha'amar V'Hoya Elam. This is the meditation. Baruch Hamshacha. Now remember, he made clear that it doesn't mean actual Hamshacha. What were the words? It's not a real Hamshacha. It's because you can't really say Hamshacha in Lifnei HaTzimtzum. What page? Kuchav Tes, right. Exactly. You can't call it Hamshacha, but it's Baruch Sha'amar V'Hoya Elam. What is Amar? Amar means that there's an Amida Belev, something is being uttered. Within this Eir, there's been a ripple. Let's put it this way. Something has begun to move. What's the word I want to use? Movement. One second. Something has begun to, when you say not murmur, stir. Right. There's a stirring. I remember there was a guy who wrote it in camp. I think it was Stock. So he wrote the song "When All Was Still." It rose in his will. It was a good expression. When all was still, it arose in His will. So the stillness of Ein Sof, which is a good word, stillness. It doesn't. I mean, it's just an expression, obviously. There's now something arose, and this is called the Rotzen.
The stillness, not a stirring.
Right, a stirring took place. This is Bereish Hamanusa de Malka. So there's a state of before it arose in His will, and then there's this rising. That's Baruch Shamar V'Hoya Eilam. V'Hoya Shir Atzmei Masha Asid. V'Hoya from Masha Asid, that what he envisions, he allocates, he estimates within himself what he wants to come. But it's a very general desire that does not have yet details in it, and as he will soon say, it doesn't even have consciousness in it, self-consciousness. It's not even a gili la'atzmei.
How do we say that the Abis is unconscious to the Abis?
You ask this question every class, and I keep answering it.
I just set it up so we can look at it like that. Maybe I can't see it any other way.
Why do you have to see it? What does God have to answer to you in your rules?
No, but this.
Why is it a problem? Does Atzmus? No. The point is, you're trying to speak from your terms. If you don't know something, you're lacking something, right? So you're thinking God's not aware; He's lacking something.
Yeah.
Correct? That's how you're coming from.
Yeah.
So I'm saying you're imposing a lack, a human lack on God. I'm saying to you, who says Atzmus does not have to be aware to be aware? Who says awareness is a virtue? Maybe awareness is the opposite. I mentioned a few times, when you're aware that your foot, if you're aware what health feels like, you actually can call that a limitation. Who says conscious awareness is a virtue? There's more to say in this. I just wanted to tell you, you're coming from a point where consciousness is so important. Who says consciousness is so important? By us, it's like you walk into a room, if you're aware, oh, that's great. If I'm not aware, that's like you're blind or you're ignorant. Who said? For example, Adam and Chava, were they aware of their sexuality, of their being? No, they were just seamless entities of God. Who said being aware of something is actually a virtue? You could call it the opposite. It's like, I'm aware of myself. It's like when you're really in the zone, in the mood, you're not aware. You actually shouldn't be thinking about it. You're so involved. I'm just trying to explain to you that you're defining things in terms based on... We're not saying God doesn't know. It's not like He doesn't know. It's just saying you can't call it conscious awareness. It's like we say Yodua and Yodeya. You follow what I'm saying? It's not that He's ignorant of what's coming next. We're not talking about lack of knowledge. We're talking about that in that state, He's so removed from it that it's not connected. It's not relevant to Him, those details. Let's put it that way. I mentioned, for example, one second. The person who wants to have a home. He wants to have a home. At the point where the pure desire, when you think of the intimacy of my home, the details of whether it's a kitchen or it's a living room or dining room are non-existent there. It's not on the contrary, it's because you're so connected to the essence of what you want from the home, the details don't matter. Not only don't matter, you're not even aware of them. Someone says, so what kind of living room do you want? You said, I'm not thinking about my living room. I'm thinking about the idea that I have a home in this world.
Okay, so we said Ein Sof is...
So I'm saying to you that...
Unconscious. I maybe could say super conscious. I don't like the word unconscious.
Well, by me, unconscious... No. Look, words are words. I understand what you're asking. For me, the word unconscious doesn't bother me because I think this way. I think the conscious... Think of it like this. No. Super conscious, fine. But I want to say it like this. No, there's a reason I'm not locked to the word unconscious because it doesn't say the word unconscious. Obviously, all it is a word. But I would like to put it this way. Remember the example I gave with the wall, the invisible wall you can't see.
Right.
When you say tip of the iceberg, the expression tip of the iceberg, what it simply means most of the iceberg you cannot see. It's under the water. What you see is just a tip, and if you don't know, you think, hey, wow. The tip can be pretty big, but you see it's only at the mountain. In consciousness, it's the same thing. What we are aware of is only a drop. When you express yourself right now, we talked about anger or other things, we're only seeing a little drop. That's like one little thing comes out of the sea. Sea being here, I'm talking the sea is sometimes expression. So for me, unconscious is not a negative, it's the opposite. It's where everything is, like Koyach HaMaskil, where all ideas rest.
Okay.
The reservoir of everything.
Okay.
Now, Remember, there's this idea. Remember, Reisha Delayas Yada, which is also part of this. That even it itself is not aware of itself.
Word, actually. God's vast reservoir of knowledge.
Yeah, but you see, but I wanted to say, but it's not. It's like it's not that's behind the door and you open up and suddenly you access it. Consciousness there is considered to be a liability, because your conscious means I'm sensing something. As soon as you sense something, you are now defined by what you sense. That's why I personally like unconscious for that reason, because I see it as actually where reality is. And our consciousness I see as being little fish jumping out of a much deeper sea. I mean, but I don't care what word you use. Honestly, super conscious may be better. Even the word conscious is really altogether no good. Because even unconscious, all I'm trying to say is that when you talk about Atmos, you're talking about something you altogether can't even talk about. We have no idea how he exists. We don't have no idea how he manifests. It's completely... Ein Sof we can talk about. We can't feel it, and we're not on that level. But it has one commonality with us. It exists. It's the purest form of existence. Field of energy. Yeah. Now, the truth is, the air that we relate to is the air after the Tzimtzum. I just want to tell you a angle from Eitz Chaim I just saw. Eitz Chaim, he says that all we can talk about is the Zayin Tachtenus of Ak, and above that we have no permission to speak because we can't speak about it. That's what he says, Beferish. Chassidus brings it, which tells you, I have a problem after I see the Ruchnis, as I said, but that's besides the point. But I guess the big masters can go all the way to Zayin Tachtenes Da'ak. My point is, I say it again, I think a critical part of all of this learning of Chassidus is the ability to be what we call Hafshata, Mafshit. It's like you're undressing reality. You're deconstructing reality. For the first level of deconstruction, I'll just go through the levels, for example, here's how we do it. Here's a table. My friends, this table is the tip of the iceberg. It's made up of elements. Okay? Whatever shapes wood. Elements are made up of molecules, level 2. We're going to strip it further. Molecules are made up of atoms. Atoms are made up of subatomic particles. Subatomic particles are made up of subatomic particles. V'chulu, v'chulu. And you're going deep. Then at some point, and I can't say what point, but maybe not some point, but if you go to the next step, there's spiritual subatomic particles. There's Asiyah Ruchnis. There's Yetzirah. There's Bria. There's Atzilus. There's Akudim. There's Ak. Lifnei Tzimtzum. Okay. What you really did was deconstruct existence. Now the truth is, I should have stopped by the Tzimtzum, because really existence stops when you reach the Tzimtzum. There's nothing. Before that, then you're talking God's presence. So then you're talking in a whole different way, but since God wants us to connect to Him, in His presence called in His Ein Sof, He has minute, I don't have a word for it really. Something that relates to everything that comes afterwards. It's something like when we say, Kol ma shebeyesh b'yabasha yesh b'yam. Everything that's on land exists in the sea. But it doesn't say that everything in the sea exists on land. Everything in consciousness exists unconscious. That means everything in this world exists in Yasir Ruchnis, Atzilus Ruchnis, Eris and Kelim, and so on. You go further, it becomes more and more abstract to a point like he says with Ak, where it's not even Kelim, it's only air. I'll get back to that. Lifnei Tzimtzum, only way I would like to just say one qualification. We don't talk about Lifnei Tzimtzum. All we talk about is extrapolation. Lifnei Tzimtzum is that big dark wall you can never enter. The truth is, Mashiach comes, through Avodah, we enter there too. But you enter then in different ways, through bittul, through not looking, whatever. My point is, the Lifnei Tzimtzum is the state that we talk about based on what we know afterwards. If a kav comes, I see a ray of light. It had to be there before. That type of language. What you're struggling with, what we all struggle with, is finding the right way of envisioning all of this and still remaining alive.
I don't think it's a great word you're using, unconscious, as long as it comes with all the qualifications.
Fine. If you can find
qualifications, it's a crummy word.
Okay, fine. But something. Look, no. My point is, I'm not trapped. I told you, I'm not married to this word.
Okay, good.
Fine. If you see through the talking, I come to constantly try to experiment with different words. I can't say there's a word. I don't think we're going to find a definitive word.
Of having a taste.
Okay.
Every time you use it.
I would love. 1 second. After I explained what I explained now, I would love that 100 people should weigh in And let's make a top list of what word would you call in English for Lifnei Tzimtzum. Ein Sof Lifnei Tzimtzum before.
Whatever word you have to use, you have to give a little qualification.
100%. You're always going to have qualifications.
Each tape is different.
Hold on, but remember.
Picks up a chapter, listen to that tape.
But you know, you're going to end up concluding that the best word is Ein Sof Lifnei Tzimtzum.
Yeah. Okay. Fine.
That's exactly what you're going to come to. We're trying. Fine. That's why, to me, the words are. I'll tell you, really, my goal with words is not even to find a word. To find a word to be able to understand that word. That's all we're doing here. We're looking for understanding of something that is a word that you can just read and then whatever. It's one big football field. Exactly what we're doing. That's why I'm explaining it. Anyway, in this field of energy, there was a stirring. Okay, we came up with a new word today, stirring. In the silence, the stillness. In the stillness arose in his will, that's the Bereish Menusa de Malka, step one. Right? All coming with permission, it's coming from Yechelis, as he said. Okay. Now, that's, and also what it says in it's Chaim, but Tarim Shnetzon on Erel and Pashut. So he says, Tarim Sha'olah B'Ritzeineh. Now a Ratzon has emerged. It's a Ratzon Pashut. By the way, I just was looking at the Sikh of Chelik Vav L'Kutei Sichos where he talks about Nesava. Everyone has the question whether Nesava Kosh Boruch Hu is like Ratzon. Makes it very clear. Nesava has nothing to do with Ratzon. It's higher than even Erein Sof. Nesava is Atzmus itself. We have no other word, so we just use that word desire, but it does not mean desire in any shape and form, because all that matters there is Atzmus. I think a key thing also, I just heard the Shabbos, I was Chelik Vav L'Kutei Sichos, when he talks the reasons for creation, Shmois Beis, about Levanim and Avonim. I want to throw this in because it may be something useful. It made me think. I think it's very relevant to how we're discussing things here also. I heard from somebody that Zusha Feldman, Olav Shalom, was a mashpia in Yerushalayim, so he was teaching a Maimer Samach Vov, and that was complicated. And then he said something that he heard from Rabbi Nochem Goldschmidt, was a big mashpia in Tel Aviv, who heard from his brother, the Rebbe's brother, Label, something. And the people who were sitting by the shir don't remember. It was Yekasil Farkash, Rabbi Farkash, and his mashpia Deutsch, what's his name? Shalom Yehuda Deutsch, yeah? So I asked the son, Zusha Feldman, if he ever remembers hearing the door, I think. So I asked him if he heard something from his father. So he said the only thing he ever heard, my imagination. The only thing he heard was that the label. It's good to hear something from the Rebbe's brother, who was known to be a big Fashtei Chassidus. They said about him that he was able to talk about 3 levels after the Tzimtzum without ever using any words from Chassidus, which is really our goal here as well. We're shooting for high. So that he said that the understanding of Eris and Kalim, the difference between Eris and Kalim, that the label said, the Rebbe's brother, that it's either looking at something that's relevant to the Zulas, or the Zulase or the Nishlu Zulase. Das ist gewesen sein Wort. Which means, is it relevant to another, or is it not relevant to another? I know it sounds simple, but when you think about it, it's tremendous, I think. Because I think very much you can apply to all these levels. I think that the key thing I've been talking about many times, especially lately, is that we can't think of them as we are trained to think about levels as like steps. Let's say there's 20 steps to get to the second floor. So you're on step 1 or step 2, step 3.
You use another word, not levels, and not dimensions.
Yeah. Dimensions for sure. You talk about spheres, dimensions or channels. I just channels. But so when you think of terms of climbing a ladder, you think of a physical ladder. So you can say, I'm on step 1. Tomorrow I'm on step 2, step 3, step 4, till I get to the top. Someone asks you, is there a difference between step 1 and step 10? No. They're both the same step, it's just higher up. It's a quantitative, not qualitative. I think that the idea of understanding God and relationship with existence is to understand that God is not just the 10th step. We're trying to talk about how close is their relationship between existence and God. I once heard, I don't know, I think it was the Chernobyl that said, when you say Moide Ani Lefanecha, you say Moide, that Ani is not Lefanecha. I acknowledge that I am not you. The first rule, the first 10 of the 10 commandments is there's one God, not many. I am not God. If you think, cut through all the chassidus and everything, comes down to this. Who are you worshiping? Self-worship? Or something greater than you are? If you make God an extension of yourself, it's an extension of self-worship. Why is Avodah Zarah such a cardinal sin? God is jealous of stones and rocks, trees. What does he care? You want to worship a sun and the moon? He's confident, you're secure. Someone wants to go worship, he's stupid, and worship a stone, you care? And you see God, no. And the cardinal Avodah Zarah goes in the category of Gilead Rayas and Sfichas Dam, like murdering someone. What does he care? Why is Avodah Zarah such a big thing? You know why it's a big thing? Because once you go there, you compromise all of Judaism, all of everything. Then there's no God anymore. You want a God on your terms. The Rambam says Avodah Zarah was rooted with good intentions. They wanted to see something. God's invisible, so they look at a star. Oh, these are God's. They show us the stars as God's fingers, God's art. Then a star is a little also, so they built a building down here that says it corresponds to the star. Then, of course, started the commercial side of it. Everyone said, you know what, you want to get to the star, to God, you got to go to my building. My building costs money. So, that's but what's the root of it all? You don't want God on His terms, you want Him on your terms. The first foundation of the Torah is God created the human being in the divine image. Not that we create God in the human image. This is number one. So if you start saying, that's why you find, because I remember I was bothered years ago when I first started learning Chassidus, I was bothered. What is this need to say that existence is Ayin? That's non-existent at all. What's wrong with saying the God that put existence, put it here from the beginning? Existence is eternal. It has a source. Why do we need to nullify existence so much? What? If you recognize there's a creator, so why existence can create? It exists. If the creator put existence here, and that's it, it's here. Why do we keep nullifying? And keep making God so distant from us, so to speak? And then I came to realize it's not the point it's about making this. The point is, are we tefes mokim? If God and us are somewhat proportionate, then you're just going to just a step away from Avodah Zarah. Not Avodah Zarah mamish. You're basically saying, okay, that's why this makes such a big thing that Aristo and the Greek philosophers, they came to, everything is yesh miyesh, ila v'alul. Now, but then, the top ila is not 10 steps up, he's 1,000,000 steps higher. So he's superior to us, he lives forever, we don't live forever, but he lives, and we live. We're in the same realm. That is the problem. As soon as you make that, then why would I be listening to him? He's bigger than me. He's stronger than me. That's why they don't come to maskana of mitzvahs. Aristo's God is a supreme being, first cause. Ilah harish, what do they call it? They call the ilah sa'ilas or sibas. Yeah, what?
Unmoved mover.
Right. The unmoved mover. Yeah. So he's no question. He's moving everything. But why do I have to listen to him? He's not. He's like my great grandfather or something like that. In other words, total submission doesn't exist. A little, yeah, because he put me here. But this type of idea that there is the concept of ein eid mulvade, that there's only godliness, and that all you are is a channel for that, and so on, doesn't exist if God has any common denominator with us. So to make him distant is not trying to push him away. It's trying to understand the reality that is completely not you and me. And then the fascinating thing turns around. That reality wants you and I. Wants existence. Now that you know that he's so distant from it, now he wants it, and he wants you to have a close relationship with him. And understand both these elements. This absolute distance, but you should also integrate it within us. Because ultimately, we are, we say Yesh Amiti and Yesh Nivra are one. Why is that not Avodah Zarah? Well, I say the same thing. You say you're one with God. We just said that God is not us. Because the same God now put a yesh here and said that yesh is properties of me that I'm putting here. But don't ever think that because I'm with the chaver lap, I'm like I'm your equal. So the understanding of all these levels we're talking about, when we say Baruch Sha'amar V'Hoya Elam, let's put it this way. I would say the first meditation would be something? I and God are not, we're two different entities, completely two realities. So all these levels is essentially a way of understanding how God gets closer to us. How God has, in language of Chassidus, what I said before, Zulase. They're starting to have a relationship with a God that has no relationship with anything, is starting to have a relationship with something, as he says, as Nivdil Matzmuse. And there's 5 steps in the process. Step 1 is Baruch Shama V'Hoya Elam, that a Ratzon to have a Zulas is there. That's what he says. What does he want? What's the Eimer? This is the language of Shari Yeshuva. This is the language. Baruch Shama. He says, that there should be something separate from me.
It's never separate because it's killed.
No, but in its consciousness. Okay, no, it's not a stereo because look, God. Ultimately, it comes from God's abilities that we don't understand. That does come, but that's what He wants. He wants something that is truly separate. Okay. I wouldn't use chelik. You could just say that He creates it every second. He's the reality of all of existence. Okay, that's step 1. Step 2, and the rest of chapter 69 is all this step 1. Baruch Sh'amar V'Hoya Elam. So Baruch is Meloshen Hamshacha. So what we're talking about here, that's why I'm using the label, the Rebbe's brothers' words. It's all about Etzem on its own, and now an Etzem relating to something beyond. If you remember, the first Perek of the whole Ayin Beis begins that way. That the Etzem alone has no relationship with anything. He has to have a Ratzon. Ratzon is the first Mamutza, is the first interface that he desires something. And that is the first Makif. That's first chapter literally in Ayin Beis. Page 2. He says literally those words. So it's going back to that. He's going back to that, but now it's, of course, now officially we should be understanding it a lot deeper.
What you said just before about...
Just a second. He says this, 1 second. Let me just say one thing, 1 second. The language there is like this. By a person, example. Before he has awakening, a stirring of any desire, the whole thing is separate from him. And desire is the first step. And then he actually talks about all the ksarim, the individual ksarim. So I'm referring back to chapter 1 because it's so vital in this whole context of things. Yeah. So Keser is that mamutza. That's the bottom line. That's Baruch Shama V'Hoya Elam. That's chapter 69.
What did you say before? The union of Nisava is related only to Atzmos.
Yeah.
How do you connect it here?
Nisava, there's no. It's like he says in Chelik Vav there. It's not negaya at all. He gains nothing, and has nothing from Tachtenim. It's just he desires. It's his desire, without any explanation, and stuck in tam. Ratzon is already is dakas the dakas is negaya what he wants. So in the Chanami, you're talking here. If you're talking about the levels, Atzmus is the whole thing is nishnegeya to him. It's an atzmizdik way. We have no other word, so we use nisava. Here it's already there's a tzir. Ratzon is a tzir. Even though it's a tzir l'maylam tzir and it's lifnei tzimtzum and everything, but that's why I use the word. But reish hermenusa damalka. B'tchilas reshus v'ratzon hamelach. B'dakus. The details are not there yet. But yeah, that's Boruch Shama V'Hayelam. Somewhere, let's put it this way: Atzmus could have just made Nesava and Tachtenim, and they wouldn't be the whole Ishtalshlus. Remember, we established that. But he wants to have a relationship. So, if Mitzad Nesava, there's no relationship. You know what Nesava would be? You and I would be sitting here, and we would not even be able to talk about it. We probably wouldn't even have books, for that matter. We wouldn't have a Torah. We'd have no Giluyim. We'd have nothing on our terms. And you'd say to me, where do we come from? I say, why are you thinking about it? Let's go to work. I mean, I'm just giving you an example. There's no pipe that connects us. There's no line. But Nesava now has turned into a tziyur that it's like your etzem and my etzem. I talked about relationships. You'll never have a connection. You and I have an etzem, and we have no keiches. Imagine there's no keiches, there's no rotzen. So your etzem, my etzem, 2 stones sitting in a room. We can't even talk to each other. Why would we? It's 2 atzmistic entities. But now this atzmistic entity has taken on some manifestation. I want something. My etzem now has come into some type of shaped desire. It's shapeless, relatively speaking, and that's all the levels. Remember, from this shaped desire till you get to existence is 1,000 levels, and many tzimtzumim and halomas. But you have the beginning of a existing relationship. You want to know really? Eir Ein Sof is the first step, really. But Eir Ein Sof we can't call any type of. Eir Ein Sof is like the first step out of Atzmus, but it's not the first connection to existence. Remember when he spoke at length, he said that Eir in Yonei is Gilei Ha'etzem. Shefa, Keiches is in Yonei L'hoyer Le'elmas. Then he said, what do you mean Gilei Ha'etzem? It also has a tafkid. But he said this tafkid is still removed from existence. It's all about how removed and how much is Tefus Mokim. Now, the Ratzon, remember, still has Keiches to deal with. Because you'll say you have a desire now to speak to me. Okay, fine. But let's say you don't have words. You don't have a mouth. So the Ratzon is outside of your etzem, but it's still far cry from having a relationship. So now the Ratzon commands and instructs the faculties, reach to that person. Now you're talking real relationship. So really you're talking here is etzem, makif, pnimi. The makif is the first step outside of etzem. That's Ratzon. It's pashut. What I think, the critical thing that I think if you want to really integrate this, is besides davening with this under a talis, is also, remember, we are thinking always from the bottom. You're thinking from the bottom, you're trying to understand this unconscious. You're trying to understand what's under the sea when you can't see under the sea. You're trying to understand we can't even understand our own unconscious. If I said to you, what does your Ratzon look like? You say, I'm not sure what my Ratzon looks like. I could just tell you what I'm doing. And for my doing, I try to figure out what the Ratzon is, how it maneuvers. Like if someone asks you, when the Etzem HaNefesh move into the Ratzon, you'll say, you're not usually conscious of that. When does a desire suddenly become a desire? Just like a thought, Chochmah. We don't know the step before, when the drop came into your mind, where was it a moment before? You have no idea. All you can do is extrapolate, as I said, either we're told, or you extrapolate and say, I'm saying that's why I think this is the challenge here, is how to relate to a reality that is in that state. Even a seed we can't relate to. Here you're talking about the desire for the seed. Imagine, a seed in the ground. A tree I see. What is a seed? I start looking at a seed, okay, I understand this seed. How does it have the power to become a tree? It's almost impossible to imagine. And you're still talking about 2 Gashmistic entities. Just one is earlier stage of development than the other. And then you're talking about the desire for the seed. The Keach HaTzmicha in the ground. What does the Keach HaTzmicha look like exactly? Why is it in the ground? Why can't I put a seed in the table, put water on it? Why doesn't it grow? What's in the ground? Okay, nutrients. But we're not just talking about nutrients. You're talking about there's a Keach HaTzmicha. There's a power. Just like a baby. About how does life emerge? I think the mysteries of existence that we talk about, like how the conception of a child takes place, we'll never fully, we marvel at it because we can't fully comprehend it, because we can't see behind the curtain. But let's say someone took you for a second on a tour. on that side of the things. Like, what's going on in the engineering room?
On the dark side.
Yeah, on the other side. Before, so we see what's happening on the receiving end. Let's go to the Machiri HaParbit. This is what we're trying to get a glimpse of. But we can't get a glimpse of it unless you cooperate. And you go on its terms. If you want it on your terms, my friends, I have to tell you, I think it's not going to work.
Taking on the train.
It's not going to work. I think the Chassidus Chabad accomplishes is it gives us aces. On our terms, it helps us travel in there so we don't completely burn up. So we have words. That's why we're struggling for words. We're trying to find words in our world to understand another world that doesn't really work with our words. That's really what our dilemma is. Let's be honest. But the point is, when you do that, you begin to get a sense of something beyond. I mean, that really comes down to, I think once you have these, what I just said, these guidelines, and then you learn Ayin Beis, or any Chassidus, especially Ayin Beis, because Ayin Beis is a journey into that place. It's no question. I mean, I give you a bunch of examples of when astronauts go out into outer space. And Neil Armstrong just passed away. Huh? Never happened. They never landed on the moon. You're one of the conspiracy theories. Is there a moon? Huh? Okay. The Soviets landed on the moon. Okay. Anyway. Doesn't matter, but people think it happened. So, you could say the same thing is with existence. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to use an example. When you go to another climate, I was going to say an astronaut, you know that you have to put on different garments or else you can't manage. I think it's also important when you're taking the Chassidus journey, you have to know you have to use different garments, different tools, different aces, and not just coming in like the Rabbi once said, the people who drink orange juice and learn the Likkutei Torah, So it's not about, so what's wrong if they drink orange juice? Because they want to have a Likkutei Torah like the orange juice. It's like two things they're having. They're two pleasures and they have every morning. That's the point. You want to Likkutei Torah, you're going to have to get out of the orange juice mentality. That's the thing. So like the Rebbe Rashab, they told Yisrael Nevler. I heard this from Yisrael, Yisrael Friedman. He was in Poking. So he verbracht. So he said that when he was a bocher, the Rebbe Rashab told him, I think I told the story. The Rebbe Rashab told him that he should stay up Thursday nights. Okay, fine. So they start staying up. The Rebbe sagt. Then, Thursday afternoon, sometimes you get a little tired to prepare for the night. So he went and take a little nap. When the Rebbe Friedrich Rebbe would go over the attendance with the Rebbe Rashab, they saw he's not there quite a few Thursdays. So the Rebbe Rashab called him in and said, hi, what's going on? Where are you? So he said that Rebbe gesagt, he should be up Thursday night, so sometimes he has to prepare for Chanas. So the Rebbe Rashab said, the main stuff from Schlafen can kommen zu nicht schlafen. You think from sleeping you can come to not sleeping. So a bunch of Bachrim, I told them the story. They came, they would say they want to come from Ring here. I said, what time you want to come? 11:30. They want to come at night. It was, I think, Sukkot. I said, what are you going to do till 11:30? Oh, we're going to go get some pizza, maybe a drink. I said, the Menschen schlafen can kommen zu nicht schlafen. They come in, they're going to come for us. Entertain themselves. They go to a comedy club or two, and then they come in to learn a little Chassidus. I mean, you see what I'm saying. You can't go with those tools. That's the bottom line. Okay, I think I said, yeah, then we got that point. Anyway, then chapter 70, he moves now to the other four. After Boruch Shama V'Haya Elam, he starts like this. Okay, so now we have the stirring of a desire. But this desire doesn't have any details yet. So Mida Achaz Bilvad, Baruch Sha'amar. Okay? So after davening for 5 years with Baruch Sha'amar, now you can get to the next level. So for sure they have everything inside them, but it's completely concealed, and the way he uses Gam Leila Atzme. By the way, I found later in Shari Tshuva, a few chapters later, he uses that reference that there's knowing about it within himself, to be aware of it within himself. So the Ratzon is there, but he's not aware of it. So he asks the question, what do you mean he's not aware? So I said, what do you mean he's not? He's not aware in our terms of awareness. It's there. It's there. So in other words, it's there because God's shleimus and Yechelis says it should be there. He wants now, the Sava has now taken the shape of a Ratzon. So then he goes on and says, okay, there's the parentheses where he talks about the Gilui Atzmei Levad, that the whole Lefnei Tzimtzum is only a Gilui Atzmei. When you say, however, that they're not recognized, you have to say, it means even to himself. Then he continues, so says, this is Baruch Hu. So Baruch Shama V'Heilam, this is Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu takes, as he says in Shari Tshuva, in Shari Tefillah, takes the Hamshachas HaHelam, Hu is Nister, okay, and brings it out to Gili. And this is now Hashara B'Keach. He's now envisioned within himself the 10 spheres. That's Baruch Hu. So it's from a Baruch Shama V'Heilam, the first stirring, has now become a manifest 10 spheres, all within his essence, however. This is all before the Tzimtzum. Then come 3 steps after the Tzimtzum. Then comes the Tzimtzum, which conceals it all and allows that Nivdal, that Dover Nivdal that he said, emerge. The Eir and Kalim, as he explains, are all distant, infinitely distant from before the Tzimtzum, from this, even from the Hashara B'Keach. Okay? And this is from Baruch Hu. You go to Baruch Eimer V'Esa. This is Ak, the Heskim. Now, after the Tzimtzum, you have now, this desire is now taken on, we can call it conscious, existential shape. So a stirring has turned into an awareness in the divine, which has now turned into an existential state of desire. A desire for all of existence, but it's Heskim only. So it's Baruch Eimer V'Esa. So now the Eimer is no longer just Namira Belev, it's now Eimer V'Esa, speaking and bringing it into an action.
So these Baruch Shomar, the Hu, is sort of like in the beginning of a project. This is where we want to reach eventually, and then we start from the bottom and go up. Is that what it is in Daven?
Absolutely. You got it right. You hit the nail right on the head. I just want to see one thing here.
Such a radical vision,
Yeah. Then goes next step. Omer V'Oisa is still only a Heskim. The determination. We can call it even a pre-desire in a way. Then comes Baruch Gezer Mekayim. Like a king can tell his subjects, or tell his ministers, or even themselves, say, I want to decree something. I want to decree something. But then as Gezer Mekayim, he actually decrees it, and then it becomes a real Gzera, Gezer Mekayim. Like he teaches in the Sharet Tefillah, he says, remember Gezer, in order for it to be Mekayim. It's not Gezer Mekayim, it's Gezer Pirush Kadesha Mekayim. Okay. That's the third. That's the fourth level. And the fifth level is, that is Yetzirah de Klolos. So now it's gone from Bria to Yetzirah, shape. And then finally comes the step of Atzilus. So what we have is from Ak, where there's no Kalim, Baruch Gezer Mekayim, there's a Keli Akudim. And now comes the full-blown structure of Atzilus. This is Asiyah de Klolos, Atzilus, that's Baruch Eisa Bereshis, another Hamshach, Baruch Eisa Bereshis, now is called Asiyah de Klolos. Okay. Right? And here he's saying the two interpretations. What's Eisa Bereshis? Either that Bereshis itself, Chachma itself, is Eisa, because it's cool, because it's a level of Asiyah, or Eisa Bereshis b'Chuchmas Nivra. Eisa Bereshis, that with Reshis, with Chachma, Bereshis, b'Chuchmas, he's Eisa, he creates. And now we go to chapter 71. Okay? Page Kuf Lamed Beis, after this particular introduction. Nimtza, chapter 71, Nimtza sheyesh kan he madreges. Nimtza, so we find from this that there's 5 levels. We infer nimtza. It's a yetza. It's even more than infer. We conclude from this. It comes out of this. It emerges, results, all kinds of words. But it's a nice way of beginning a chapter. Nimtza. Sheyesh kan hei madreges. That there's 5 levels. Level 1, b'chinas harotzen haposhet zeh inyan bereisho menusa demalka. Level 1 is the seamless desire, the first stirring. That's in the beginning, bereish, betchila, in the reshus of the king, a desire. Shebemadregezu lo yesh adayim pratim klal. This level 1, that doesn't yet have any details at all. Gam lo b'chinas gilui la'atzmei. Not only to others, but also to yourself. Think of it a step before machshava. Machshava, you're thinking already to yourself. But you have ideas inside of you. Maybe that's a good example, by the way. You have ideas inside of you before you consciously think. How many ideas are right now in your brain? Not only the ones you're thinking about, they're there. But they're not there even to yourself. They're not revealed yet. I think that's a good example, actually. And then there's machshava would be step 2. That's a gil atzmi. Dibur is emir ve'esa is not bad. Okay, yeah. V'hu be'erin sof shalifnei atzimtzum. I'm sorry, I skipped a line. I'm sorry. Then comes step number 2. Mashagol of Galifu, the second half of the statement is Bereishim. Then it says Gol of Galifu b'dir lo. It says Gal saprotim avul hula atzmi adayin. That's step 2. Gol of Galifu means he engraves. So it arises, it's the stirring of the desire, that engraves in turn into Hirei law. Is Galos HaPratim, the revelation of details, but they're still to yourself. So this is now the first revelation, but they're still to Atzmei Adayin.
So Hirei law would be like that field of energy that is engraved.
No, field of energy is even higher. Hirei law is level 2. It's Chassidus is a discussion with the Hirei law. When you say Gol of Hirei law, is the Hirei law the goal of Galifu is in Tirei law, or the Tirei law is the whole Rotzen? Okay, but here it's mashma that goal of Tirei law. The Tirei law is the makif. The Eagle Hagadol would not be the Rotzen, it would be the 10 hidden spheres of the Eir. That's Bapashtas was mashma. V'hu be'erein sof shalifnei tzimtzum. These 2 levels are in the infinite light before the tzimtzum. Achar kach gimel madreges lachar tzimtzum. And afterwards come 3 levels that are after the tzimtzum. And what are they? V'hein b'chinas biyah klolim. That's the macrocosmic biyah. B'ri yitzir asiyah klolim. As we said, Ak, Akudim, and Atzilus. U'b'derech klal zeh b'chinas naran v'chai. And in general, these are the levels of nefesh, ruach, neshama, and v'chai yechida. 5 levels. So now he's connecting it now to our souls. Not just in existence in our souls, there's also these 5 dimensions.
Wow.
Or it's actually Naran Chai is also in the world, there's 5 dimensions. The B'chinas Harotzna Poshet, the simple desire, Liyashe'ein Bei Madreges Pratim Gam La'atzmei, Zeh B'chinas Yechida. Being that it has no details even to itself, that's the level of Yechida. U'B'chinas Ha'ashara B'Keach, level 2. The Hashara B'Keach.
Those are the levels, or it just reflects those levels?
It says Dehu. These are. In general, these are. Yeah. Ubchinis Hashara B'Keach. And the estimation in its the ability, Hashara B'Keach, meaning that the potential estimation, evaluation.
Modality after a statement like that, to find the way you just define modality, like those separate. It's like the 2 out of 5 levels of Rosal are right up the left and absence, and most of them are saying modality. They're completely nibble. It's wild. At the same time.
Remember, compared to Atzmus, even Erein Sof, the field of energy, is completely distant. So all this is all happening in a thing that's completely insignificant from Atzmus' point of view. Just to bear that in mind. B'chinas Hashara B'Keach, the evaluation in the potential, who B'chinas Chaya. That's the level of Chaya, level 2. We'll connect the B'chinas Chaya, who sheyesh lo zeh shaychus al ha'pnimi. Because Chaya is already a makif that's connected to the Pnimi. Meaning it has already some Gili, some type of revelation.
It's the law at that point.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he's now giving an example. Like we say by Kesed Atzilus B'frat when you speak specifically. Here he's talking generally. But when you get more into details, on the microcosmic level, by Kesed Atzilus B'chinas Chaya Zeh B'chinas HaChetzenis HaKesed Shenikra Reisha Mokal L'Netzolem. One minute. Let's read it. We have to read it to understand it. The microcosm, macrocosm always are relevant here. So it's like in Kesed Atzilus, what's Chaya? Yechida is Primis HaKesed. Chaya is Chetzenis HaKesed, the outer dimension of HaKesed. Shenikra Reisha Mokal L'Netzolem. It's called the beginning, the head, and the source of the emanations. V'yesham iskalos esas spheres, and it already has an encompassing of the 10 spheres, like Tehiri Ilah, the Shashar B'keich, which has the 10 hidden spheres. V'kidur b'inyan Mei Shana, like we know in the inyan of Mei Shana. It says the sugya of Chai Sora, Vayu Chai Sora, Mei Shana, V'esrim Shana, V'sheva Shanim. So Sheva Shanim is Midas. Esrim Shana is Chachma and Bina times 2. That's 20. And Mei Shana is Keser. What's Mei? 10 times 10 spheres. So it's the Shleimus of spheres. That's Keser. But we're talking the Chetzenis HaKesed. Remember, he's talking before about the interface of Keser. According to the Arizal, the higher state of Keser is Seif HaMaitzel. And the top is, and the lower level, Arich, is Reish HaNetzolim. So this is Chaya. So just like it is in the microcosm, the Keser Proti of Atzilus, you also have Chaya Yechida. What's Yechida? Yechida is Primus HaKesser. Chaya is Chetzenis HaKesser, Arich, Atik Arich. And then come Nefesh Ruach Neshama. Usually Chabad, Chagas Nihi, is Neshama Ruach Nefesh. So the same thing is in the macrocosm. What's the Keser Kloli? The Keser Kloli is Ein Sof before the Tzimtzum. That's the Keser of Ak. Ak is also Keser Kloli, but that's within after the Tzimtzum. The Keser Kloli is the Igul HaGadol. So you have Yechida would be the premise of that. He doesn't say that here. But the Chetzenis of that, which is level 2, Hashara B'Kayach, the envisioning of the spheres, which is the 10 hidden spheres, is the level of Arich, of Chaya. However, the spheres of there are in a form of engraving. Like it says in L'Kutei Teira, the explanation of Imbuchul Kaisei and the explanation of Zeis Chukas HaTeira. So here we have now Yechida and Chaya. So you see the word Chikika, engraving. So just like in the microcosm, in Arich you have the 10 spheres, but they're in engraved form instead of a written form. Written, when you write something, the letters and the parchment are two separate things. Chikika is within. So the spheres are there, but they're engraved within. So it's a Gili La'atzmei, essentially. Same thing as in the macrocosm. That's the Shir Sagnuzis. 10 hidden spheres, the level 2 is Chaya.
They have the same system for every makuf.
Yeah, you could apply it to everywhere. Yeah. So that's clear, very clear, right. Then comes the next 3. Upchin is Biyah, and the 3 levels, Biyah, B'riyat Yosir, Hein, Gimel Madregas, Naran. They're the 3 levels of Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama. So there we go. So the 5 levels he's described are the 5 levels of Nefesh Neshama Chai Yechid. Now watch this. Ubekol echad mahem Bekol echad mahei madreges Eimer Baruch. And all 5 levels we say Baruch. Baruch Shamar v'haya Elam. Baruch Hu. Baruch Eimer v'Esa. Baruch Gezer Mekayim. Baruch Esa Bereshis. And there's another 7 Baruchs that come afterwards. There's 12 total. 12, 13? 12, whatever. Okay. So on each one you say Baruch. Shahu b'chinas hamshacha. Because each one is Shahu b'chinas hamshacha. Because that's the state of hamshacha. Of transmission. Baruch means hamshacha. Li is the b'chinas ha'atzmus u'lamayla gam b'chinas ha'ratzon ha'pashat. Being the level of atzmus is higher even from the first level of the simple desire. Shahu b'chinas ha'adalevad. Because the simple desire is only a reflection. U'kameshin is bar le'el perek samach tes. Like we discussed earlier, chapter 69. That there's Ein Sof before it all. So that's why Al Zamar Baruch Shamar. That's why you need the first Baruch. Being that it's Nivdal, being that it's that is, and it doesn't say the word nivla. I'm sorry. That it's only a reflection. You need hamshacha. So you say Boruch sha'amar, Boruch, be mamshich sha'amar, and say v'hoya liyas hamshacha ha'amida ba'arotzen haposhet. Boruch sha'amar, that there should be the transmission and the speaking, the utterance, v'arotzen haposhet, and the simple desire. So you're basically saying, desire, please desire. Baruch Sha'amar, blessed is he who desires. You're saying, Baruch, I'm being mamshich, the one that desires. I'm being mamshich a desire, basically. Or, not that you're being mamshich. Baruch, you are being mamshich a desire. You're acknowledging God's hamshach, first hamshach. Yeah, you're basically acknowledging that there's a God and you are not God. That's the key. Start with that. And then get into the details. That would be a good beginning. Which means that from the level of Atma Baruch, which is Kodesh, sacred, remove the Kodesh here from being removed and apart completely. Completely, Gamri, Megeder Elemus, from the, not only from Elemus, Geder Elemus. Geder Elemus, Nishra Elemus. From the whole Geder. He's not completely not in his Geder. It's not in his category. It's not even in the same department. Yi Hamshacha is Bechinas Harotzen HaPoshet v'Hamshacha Me'ahalam. There should be Hamshacha from the level of the Rotzen, of the Hamshacha. There should be a simple desire, v'Hamshacha Me'ahalam, and a transmission from the concealed. That may be already second level. I'm not sure. Probably not. Okay, that's good. So remember, we're talking here about how apart, and from there should now become a relationship. It's beautiful. It's beautiful because you could apply it also to us. I mentioned this example. When you love somebody, you have a relationship with them. Your etzem is connected to them. So there's an etzem that is apart from anything, from anyone. And yet you want that etzem to be revealed and to express itself to someone you love. That's what's going on here. So the etzem is apart, but now that apart is coming to the Baruch Sha'amar. V'inyan hu, the inyan in this is the nitchilas habriya hoy mitzad atzmi mitzad ki chafetz chesed hu. Now explaining how the process takes place. Because, so how does this happen? So it says the beginning of creation, this was mitzad atzmi. This Baruch Sha'amar happened on its own. Ki chafetz chesed hu. Because he desired to do chesed. And afterwards, once we were created, now it's dependent on our initiative, on our hisedus from above, our initiative from below. Susa l'tata literally means hisedus l'tata, from below. And then on this we say Baruch Sha'amar liyis hamshachas harotzen. That's why we say Baruch Sha'amar, that there should be the transmission of this desire. V'agam da'er v'achayis chitzeni shalei elmis. He's asking a question. So why do we need to say it? Even though v'agam, though this energy and life force, chitzeni, this outer superficial life force of existence, shezeh b'chal b'chinas yichud chitzeni da'aba v'ima. This in general, in the parentheses, it says, is the unity of the outer dimensions of Chachma and Bina that gives life to existence. Nimshech ma'atzmai, it transmitted on its own. Gam bli yasus l'tata, even without an initiative, an awakening from below. Like it says elsewhere. Shezeu akrisis bris the Noach. This is the covenant that God made with Noach. Oid kol yemei haaretz. After the Mabul, the destruction of the world, God made a covenant that I will Ayin Beis. As long as the days of this earth will last, I make a promise, God said, a covenant with you that I will never destroy it again. So we see from that, this is not dependent on our efforts. When the world destroyed itself and there was Mala Aretz, Shaches, the world was filled with crime and corruption, that affected. But now the world's existence is not dependent on our effort. As God promised Noach, that's the Christ's bridge, that it will be on its own even without us, even without our avodah. So what's the Boruch Shamar? She said, nevertheless, even this basic minimal life energy that gives existence, that sustains existence, that also you have to transmit we have to draw down through effort, through work, through avodah, through worship, through our service. Shezein Rosh Hashanah, and this is Rosh Hashanah. Obviously, the big question is going to be asked.
Nobody shows up.
Right. See, great minds think alike. Okay, let's see what he says. Maybe there's always someone that shows up. That's the thing. At least the Rebbe shows up. This is the Inyan of Rosh Hashanah. Remember, this is a Rosh Hashanah Maimer. That we need to transmit and draw down the level of desire for worlds in its earliest, in its first root. Like we say, today is the beginning of your creation, our memory, to the first day. It's a memory to the beginning of all Ishtalshlus. That's what it means, the Kol Yom Edition. Reminding us, not the first day. It's reminding us, the Kol Yom Edition, today is the beginning of creation, and reminding us, taking us back to the first root, the beginning of the entire cosmic order, and the infinite light before the Tzimtzum. The level what? Level 1. Ramanusa de Malka. The Rishus of the king. Being that on Rosh Hashanah, everything returns to its primordial state, to its original state. It's like in the beginning of creation. Like it says, what does it say there? So Reishis in the Pasuk, God's eyes are from this he brings in Tanya, and I guess okay, Simon Yudalit. She says, Reishis, for God's eyes are on the world, but Reishis from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. But Reishis is missing an aleph. So you can read it like Tishrei. What's the missing of an aleph? The missing aleph is because before Rosh Hashanah, right before Rosh Hashanah, like he says there, the energy and the life force, mistalik, it completely expires above, is removed. So how do we mamshech it? Through our avodah. V'agam desilukei Rosh Hashanah gam ken rak b'pnimiyus. Now here we go. And even though he just was making a case, what's the case? He's trying to say that even the life force that keeps existence into being, though God promised it to Noach, also needs avodah, and he's proving it from Rosh Hashanah. So he's asking a question. Agam desiluk Rosh Hashanah gam ken rak b'pnimiyus. The siluk, when we say the aleph is missing, we're not talking about existence period. We're talking about the pnimiyus, the inner desire, the inner passion, the inner vitality to keep existence. That's what's a siluk. That is removed. But the outer dimension, like when you're asleep, you're still functioning. Your body is still functioning. So the outer dimension of life remains. And that's why the world is sustained, like it says elsewhere, even if no one shows up. He's asking a question. However, in truth, nevertheless, in truth, the light of the energy is very diminished the first night of Rosh Hashanah. At Kiyah Shefer, until the Shefer is blown. You don't feel it? When you're standing at 770, you're crushed there. You feel like your life is almost gone.
What are we doing when we're saying Baruch Shem or before the Shefer? What does that mean?
Okay, one second. Well, maybe they remember the Alter Rebbe blew Shefer 1 year before Baruch Shem too.
When against Napoleon.
Right. Shefer. So, but truth is the Hest.
Yeah.
And the Be'emes is the Rebbe sagt the Be'emes is the Miyat Eir, the first night of Rosh Hashanah. I don't know. The world doesn't seem to be aware of that.
The Shad is the Shabbos. The Shabbos comes after Christmas.
The Rebbe has this whole stick on that. The Chetzein is a previous, yeah. The Zayin, In Chelik Tes is a whole sikha. When Shabbos, it says the Chitzenius Achayis goes up. Rosh Hashanah, the Primus Achayis goes up. So when you left on Shabbos and Rosh Hashanah, you should have nothing left. So the Rebbe explains that the Chitzenius of the Primus and the Primus of the Chitzenius. Rest assured, the world is still here, so we have an explanation. Anyway, but let's go on. Right. This is the sleep of Zohar Rampin. The giant sleeps. Dormita is in Aramaic sleep. Shina. Slumber. So Dormita de Zohar literally means the sleep of Zohar Rampin, the Midas. Sha'erhu b'miyud ma'id. The energy is very diminished. So that's, even though the Pnimius primarily leaves, but even the Chitzenius is saying is also very b'miyud. And we draw down, we transmit a new life, a new light, a new energy through Tkir Shefer, like he says in the Gersa case. Every year a new energy that never was there before.
It's like a person waking up in the morning with fresh energy.
Yeah. Through Tkir Shefer. V'tes brach is the Musaf, the Rosh Hashanah. And the 9 brachas, which is the Malchus, the Chrein, the Shefris, 9 special blessings we say in Musaf of Rosh Hashanah. Which is on Shabbos, that's what Mamshech everything. Tkir Shefer. V'cheinu b'chol yom. Now he's giving now exactly what you just said. Also, now again, microcosm. That's macrocosm, Rosh Hashanah. So what do we establish? That this Ratzon, the general desire for existence, the stirring, the first time God did it on His own. After that, it's dependent on our initiative.
It's been said a day before in Australia.
Right, there's like a lot also. There's never a time in the world.
The shofar blew before, a day before. There's always something.
Right, but now Rosh Hashanah comes in, it was already blown, the shofar was already blown, so there's never a time.
Yeah, but then only Australia would have existence. Who says?
It's all the 7 hours ahead. It's always a time.
Yeah, but that maybe then only they have life. What about New York? We need
The world, we're talking about the world, no?
So what's your answer to that? Come on.
That's one answer. There's never a time in the world.
Who says that?
I thought about it a few times.
Hold on a second. No, I would not say that at all. So, first of all, what about that first person? It always begins somewhere. The first place where Rosh Hashanah enters.
Yeah, but then the other ones are having a chayes because it's not yet the night of.
So you're basically saying that. Look, the only way to prove this is if every Jew didn't go to shul and did nothing on Rosh Hashanah. If everyone slept, we'd see if anything happened, right? If the world would stop being. That would be the only way you could know, basically. Okay, so we always have a few radicals that are not going to cooperate with that. We can never test it. Yeah.
But anyway, if nobody showed up, there would always be. I mean, it would be later.
I would have to believe that even if no one showed up, there would be. But he says like sleep. It would be like he says. He says that the Chitzenius is there, but it's diminished, very diminished. But you could ask 7 billion on this people on this planet, and they're not aware of any of this. It's another story because we don't see. What do we see? What do we know? Well, listen, in Shayach Amun it says any second God stops speaking, existence stops. How many people relate to that? The fact is, we're accustomed that the things are going to keep going. I don't think this is meant to be taken in a type of literal sense. I'm not that it's not literal, but I mean to say he's not trying to point out that if you don't go to shul, threaten you, the world's going to stop. He's trying to point out how we are part. That God created the world for a reason. We are part of getting that stirring going, that awakening, that relationship. So if God, he's going to say all the questions you could ask. When we daven to Hashem, we don't get our answers, prayers answered. I mean, it's about the relationship. That's above all what he's really saying here. So okay. Yeah, a different point,
really. That's still bothering me at this point was that there's always, assuming somebody shows up, I'm not even asking.
I understand what you say. I got what you're saying.
Because when we still had the complete chayes, because it was before Rosh Hashanah for them, and then they have Rosh Hashanah.
Okay.
So even
but what do you say about the time before Jews lived only in Eretz Yisrael? They were not anywhere else. I mean, there too. I understand some people wake up earlier. Look, The fact is, we do believe absolutely that avodah is not just an individual thing; it's collective. Meaning, like the whole idea of a chazan even. Why do you need a chazan? One of the reasons is because someone doesn't daven properly, so he's like mechavan, etc., etc. He's yetzehem. There is no question that in avodah we have that type of symbiosis. The kohanim do their thing, the levim do their thing, the Yisrael do that, and also people in the world. So everyone has their so-called function and job. So no question is that's an absolute truth. I mean. Okay, anyway, so it says v'cheinu b'chol yom. The same thing as every day. Same idea every day. The Laila who's mana cheshach. Laila, night, is the time of darkness. What does darkness mean spiritually? U'pchinas silika er, state of, and it's a level of removal of light and energy. V'nisharak ma'at chayis, and only a little energy and life force remains. V'hu'inyan hashina b'pchinas kista d'chayusa. That's the idea of sleep, which is kista d'chayusa, that you only have a like a shadow of life. It's only like an echo. How do you translate kista? Shadow? Kista would be a like a residue almost. A kista, a diminished state kista. I'm not sure what the root of it is in Aramaic, but we always touch it as like when a person sleeps, there's a certain splinter. No, I wouldn't say kista is not splintered. Where would you get kista from? What kusht? No, kushta is emes. Kista. It may be shadow, maybe like a cell. Kista, it's echo. Anyway, but it means only a very small amount of life force, life energy. You know what the root kista is? What does it say? The word?
It's not a splinter, but it's like a chip of a wood. In other words,
it's only a little bit. What word is used in Shulchan Aruch? What are you referring to?
Going to the fire when you light the fire.
So it says a kista. That's where you got the word from? Where did you hear the word kista as splinter? Do you remember?
Chip.
Okay, fine. It could be.
Little chips that you have a lot of memory.
Okay.
Leftover of that.
The Taran, the Gan Eden, Istima B'Layla, the gates of Gan Eden are closed by night. Okay, everything closes down, basically. The Kol HaAshpaz Be'elam Hu B'Gan Eden, because all the transmissions of the world come from Gan Eden. U'B'Layla Taran the Gan Eden Istima, and by night those gates are closed. U'Kameshakosah B'Teireh Da V'Ivdil HaParechas B'Pashal Echlocha. Like he says in Teireh, the Maimer V'Ivdil HaParechas B'Pashal Echlocha. U'B'Chol Yom Tzrichim Lahamshich Mechadash. And every day, every morning, we have to renew. We have to be retransmitted from anew this life force.
The biggest revelations come from our chaylim.
That's fine, because when it's darker, other things emerge. Yeah. And the primary thing is not necessarily actual giving it complete life. Because look, when a person goes to sleep, I think it's an excellent example, what happens? He's in a diminished state. You're going to say, if someone says in the morning, I'm fine with that, that's not good. You want to have something. So what's regenerated during sleep? Some type of regeneration and a refreshing rejuvenation of the cells that gives like a new form of life. So he's saying that's the same idea. So the primary thing in the morning is not the pure life force. The life force is there. The heart is beating. The brain is working. You have. It's lahamshach teis v'seidus li hagili lamata. Is to draw down the additional abundant energy, additional energies, increasing energies. There should be a revelation below. By night, the gates are closed of Gan Eden, and by morning, that's what you're doing. Yeah. Now it goes back. So that's just an example on a daily basis. Now, collectively or generally, macrocosmically speaking, it's on Rosh Hashanah, once a year. This is This is the transmission or the drawing down of the desire for kingship on Rosh Hashanah. Because that on Rosh Hashanah is transmitted. A desire for the world is through transmitting the desire for kingship that we transmit on Rosh Hashanah, that we draw down on Rosh Hashanah. Melucha, the idea of Melucha, leadership, kingship, is that there should be a Gili Er Lamata. So why does God desire worlds? Because of the revelation of His kingship there. The Pamarishin Melucha, Shenem B'Teiru B'Gab B'Kriyas Yamsuf. The first time the word Melucha, kingship, is mentioned in the Torah is by Kriyas Yamsuf, by the parting of the sea. Like it says, Hashem Yimlech, a God will rule forever and ever. What's the connection? Because Kriyas Yamsuf was the Gili of Elokus, of godliness, of infinite light below. That's why they said Melucha. So Melucha is connected to revelation below, which means a desire for the world below. The Rosh Hashanah, this is also the union of the transmitting of the Melucha of the kingship. And Rosh Hashanah, like it's known, the difference between kingship and ruling and dominance. The that when we request rule over the world with your glory, with your honor, that should be the revelation of Melucha. Memshala, on the other hand, he doesn't spell it out, I see here. Memshala is usually by force, coerced. Melucha is a desired thing. And it's also a Gili HaMelucha. Right. So why does he bring here Melucha Memshala? He's not talking about force, really. He's talking about Gili Lamata.
Right, so the Melucha is the total acceptance from the people.
So it's Hamshach, it's a real Hamshacha. Okay. Because according to the cosmic order, the regular order of the chain of existence, the energy diminishes from level to level. Until below, till below, it's in a state of darkness and concealment, and a overpowering ego, overpowering sense of self, egocentric existence. Good. And this is the Aveda, this is the worship, the work, to draw down, to transmit additional energies from the Islamata Gile'er, that we shouldn't have this cheshach. In other words, we live in darkness and egocentric, and we live focused on ourselves. And the Aveda is to bring down the energy that there should be a revelation of the divine, of the source. On this we have the descent of the souls below. Like it says, the soul of God, the flame of God is the soul of man, or the soul of a human being. Because being that this is almost like a sikha. Now, this language is a lot easier to. This is because being that Elam has this lower world, this world is Elam HaShafel, is a very inferior world. V'acheshech av kofel mechupel, and a very thick darkness. Kofel mechupel, double and tripled. Cheshech kofel mechupel. It's the lesson from Tanya, I think also Perek Lamed Vav there, something like that. Not exactly. There's a kofel mechupel. Kofel mechupel means doubled, and mechupel means doubled over doubled, like quadrupled. V'tzorich la cheshech kofel mechupel. Darkness over darkness over darkness over darkness. And we need to increase in candles. It's a nice expression here. We need a lot of candlelight. We need a lot of candles. That's Ner Hashem Shmasadam. To illuminate the darkness. And that's why God created the human being. In case you were wondering. Because he's a Ner Hashem Nishmas Adam, to radiate the name of Havaya, Ner Havaya, B'B'chinas Gili, in a revealed way, to illuminate this world, in order to effectuate the transformation of darkness to light. This is interesting. It says it so many places. It's defining, telling us what we're here for. Do we know this is the question? Where did that say? Right after Ner Hashem Shmasadam? No, I don't think so. Right, it's in the Parshas, V'hayei Bracha. Also, V'hayei Bracha says in Lech Lech, where does it say V'hayei Bracha? It's such a common expression. And you shall be a blessing to the world, basically. It is an Ekev, I think, or a V'hayei Bracha. I think by Avram also, by Lech Lech something, there's also, you'll be a Bracha. Avochem Nevachacha. A Bracha, yeah. You shall be a blessing. Bracha, B'kerev ha'aretz. You shall be a blessing in the innards of the world, the kerev. Within the world. Shu b'chinas hamshachli is a gili lamata. That's the transmission, there should be a gili lamata. Rabbi Zalman Posner told me once, I remember it was the Sukkah, it's a very beautiful thing. The first time the Frierdiker Rebbe sent him on a shlichus, I think it was Chicago, he was a bacher, he was like, the Frierdiker Rebbe sensed he was tentative. So the Frierdiker Rebbe, he said, was after the stroke, it was hard for him to speak. But when you listen to him, you have to also look at his hand movements. And because he would use his hands. So he says, Frierdiker Rebbe said to him, he saw he was tentative about going on the shlichus. So the Frierdiker Rebbe says, when a soul has to come down below, it doesn't want to go. Why? Because above is varm and lichtig. Lichtig, it's bright and warm. And below is kalt and finster, it's cold and dark. So a soul doesn't want to go. Then the Frierdiker Rebbe took his finger and said like this, was tut man? What do we do? What do they do? And he took his finger and said, the mustar upgain. Like this. He says it was like trembling. He saw the finger. Remember he made like this. So the mustar upgain. Kept going. Very slowly, deliberately. Und dort was his mustar upgain was his von Fuße lichtig und warm. The kalt und finster darfst du dort machen lichtig und warm. Like that. Yeah.
Was it ever there, like to translate to him?
There was usually some other. I don't know if someone was there. Usually there was someone, not the Rebbe. There was the secretary. The Rebbe sometimes, but others.
I heard only
Rabbi Simpson.
Really understand that.
No. There were a few people. There was Simpson. There were secretaries. There was Chaskin. There was Chaim Lieberman. There was a number of people that. He told me every time things were difficult. Everybody's got. He'd remember the finger.
Yes.
He envisioned. He closed his eyes. Getting the finger.
A lifelong picture.
The finger.
Wow.
The Rebbe's finger took his neshama down. So he's saying here, was samachem lichtig? The Hest of Avram.
Yep.
Gewalt, Avram. Wie viel das hier? Yeah, v'hainu sh'ayidei mamshichem me'er b'gili b'nafsham. How do you do this? By first transmitting energy in your nefesh, in your spirit, in your soul. What's the expression? Yeah. Okay, Mamish, there's the pasuk. But I think there's also another place. I think you're right, but I think he's probably referring to this one. It says b'kerev ha'aretz. Doesn't say a lashon like that there, right? Okay. So the first thing is by gili nefesh, by the contemplation. He's telling you now why we're learning this whole Ayin Beis. You want to bring gili eir in this world. See, by contemplating elokus and godliness. And this contemplation is by hamokas hadas. Here we need some words. By hamokas hadas. No. By hamok is Areintifuzach. Areintifuzach is hamoke. Hamoke is areintifuzach. Immersion, more than that. It's when you go like penetrating with complete depth. Hamokas hadas. Investing your das, your mind with full profundity. Not profound. Hamokas hadas is digging deep. Hamokas hadas, like really seriously concentrating. That's what it means. Shaloi tiyeh b'chinas makif levad. It shouldn't just be a makif. Yeah, kim sheyeh nirgish b'pnimis. But rather it should be felt b'pnimis. Until you really internalize it. She'oz yigia hadover la'atzmus nekudas nafshei, because then it reaches It's interesting whole piece here. It reaches to the, because then it penetrates to the point. La'atzmus nekudas nafshe, to the deep point, to the inner point inside of the soul. V'yiseider b'yiseider samiti, and you'll get awakened with a true awakening. She'echevtze be'emes belakus, that you should truly desire godliness. V'lo yirtze klali is b'cheshches v'achumri is the nefesh habamis. B'cheshches ha'chumri is the nefesh habamis. And you won't at all desire and want to be within the darkness and the crassness and coarseness of your animal soul. Rak ruche v'neshmosei yalav. He's using here nefesh, ruach, neshama, by the way, if you notice. Nefesh, he just said nekudas nafshe. Now he's going to ruach and neshama. You see? As he said before, biyah. Okay. Is naran. Rak ruche v'neshmosei yalav yasev b'pchinas esagdas balakus. Only his spirit and his neshama should gather itself in a unity into Elikus. Yasif would be together, right? Yasif is consolidated, gathering, yeah. The Gam Esaelim Nosen Beliboy, and this is. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so now, what's he talking about? Let's go back to the whole content here. He's talking about how do you transmit this desire of God for existence. It's the transmission of God's desire from Melucha, for Gili Elikus. And we do this, and Neshama does this because the Neshama is sent to this earth in a dark world to be like a flame that brings Havaya, the light of Havaya, into this world. And you begin first by doing it inside yourself. In Olam Katan Ze Adam, the microcosm, as the individual. Now he's going and saying, once you do it in yourself, through this he also refines and transforms also the darkness of the world. There should be a revelation of the divine in existence. Because also the world was given to you in your heart. It's an expression meaning that we control. The world was, the world is your oyster. What's the expression? The world is in your palm of your hand, in your heart. The world has been given to the heart of a human being. Which means through being transmitting the revelation in your soul, and exiting the darkness of the nefesh habamis, that in turn affects the whole world. Now parentheses. And in this there's two ways. Either he leaves the darkness, which means through having such a revelation as nefesh, he transcends higher than all the crassness and the coarseness, the coarse things in life. Through this he weakens the coarseness, crassness of the animal soul. That's one way. Another way, or through this revelation, this nefesh, he affects that the animal soul itself should leave the darkness. What does that mean? The first way is almost like imposing. Being that the soul recognizes godliness, so automatically it weakens the animal. The second one, animal soul. The second one, it convinces the animal soul to also want to have that, to leave. Which means through its contemplation, Maven, he understands. Maven, Gama Seichel HaTivi, even the natural mind also understands the Ayin Eliki, the godliness of the subject. Ubeiseres Hamidus, the Nefesh Habamis, and through the awakening of the midas of the emotions and feelings of the animal soul, Meiseres Gama Nefesh Habamis, B'chinas Rotzi v'Hava L'Elikus. Also, an animal soul awakens in its rotzi, in its desire, in its yearning and love for godliness. That's the ultimate, and this is the primary work and the ultimate purpose. Like we say, you shall love, which means the two loves, with both sides of yourself, with both sides. And through this, it affects the world to have the transformation from darkness to light, not just the light shines and it weakens the darkness, and also transformation. that the world, the Torah Tachtenim, the material items of this world should become containers for the divine. V'zeh Baruch Sha'amar V'haya Elam, and this is Baruch Sha'amar V'haya Elam. Because now he's going back. Remember, the whole thing was what? Is to awaken that first desire. After he explained the 5 levels of the soul, he said the whole thing is to awaken that desire, that Baruch Sha'amar, the first time. The first Baruch Sha'amar is Rosh Hashanah. So Zeh Baruch Sha'amar V'haya Elam, and it should be a world, Pirush Liyah Sha'amar V'haya Elam. Which means Liyah Sha'amar V'haya, that it should be Sha'amar, to say, to utter, and there should be a world, B'chinas Baruch V'gili B'leva Adam. He's teaching it now in Aveda. He's saying Baruch Sha'amar V'haya Elam means that the idea that there should be a world, that the world that exists should be in a form of Baruch V'gili, revelation in the heart of the human being. That when you contemplate on the idea that he says and brings the world into being, it should have an emotional reaction, an excitement in the heart. So this is another taich now, because in the Maimorim from the Alter Rebbe, and Tzemach Tzedek explains this, and the Mittler Rebbe too. Not in the Maimorim we learned. And the other interpretation of Baruch Sha'amar talks about: is he talking within the heart, or is he talking within the world? Baruch Sha'amar V'haya Elam, are you talking about you? You're talking about the world. So he says it's interdependent. By awakening inside of you, you awaken it in the world. So Baruch Sha'amar V'haya Elam also has a meaning inside of you, that the Sha'amar V'haya Elam should be Baruch V'gilui, not just in other words that God should extend His desire in creating, but it should be revealed within you in your heart. As Elam Nasan B'libay. That's the Esa Elam. Baruch Sha'amar V'haya Elam Nasan B'libay. You see the deeper on the interpretation? V'chein Baruch Hu. And the same thing, the second level, Baruch Hu. Shebechinas Hu Yeh Bechinas Gili Belev. The same, the second level, Baruch Hu, that the concealed dimension of desire should now come revealed to yourself, should become revealed in your heart, Sheyeh Halev Mispal, that the heart should be excited. What's the difference between the first one and the second one? The first one is still that general desire. This one comes into details. And all this comes through additional light from above. And all this is through the Teisvuseh, the additional energy that comes from above. That's Baruch Sha'amar, that there should be liyas, there should be this Amira Zu. This Amira, this God's utterance to create, to bring the world into being, should be with an additional energy from its root and its source, in the level of Atzma saying, say Baruch Hu. I'm not clear what he's saying right now, what he's saying here. Is it the Teisvuseh that causes this Aveda?
He gives us the possibility.
Yeah, because through this will be the Gili also below, B'nefesh Alakis, in the divine soul, will be Gili Be'elam and revealed in the world, to illuminate the darkness. And then afterwards comes the transmission of the level of Atzma Sensei Baruch Hu itself, Yashash Cheshach Sisrei. Yashash Cheshach Sisrei. Now the revelation of Yashash Cheshach Sisrei, which means it's usually referring to the Helama Atzmi. Yashash Cheshach Sisrei. How do you translate Yashash Cheshach Sisrei? That the concealed
darkness
should emerge. Yashash is from the word.
Yashash means a place the place to make it darkness is hiding, it's concealment. That's how you literally touch it.
Yeah. So that what's now the revelation? Okay, he's throwing in now a new thing. The revelation of the Helama Atzmus that's higher from Eir, all the way back to that. That's like the transformation part. You see, what he's saying here goes back and forth. First he said that Baruch Sha'amar V'haya Elam, okay, that's God's process of creation. Our avodah in this is that's the first time. Now we have to be the Suslatata comes through our initiative, and we have to awaken that desire. We awaken that desire. What's that desire? Desire for the Gili, for the revelation of godliness. That means that's why the soul came down here, is to reveal godliness. And by doing it within your own soul, you then reveal it also in the world. Okay, so then the Baruch Sha'amar V'haya Elam, that you have to have this Baruch Shalom should be inside your heart.
And that's for the Avodah, there's bonus,
and should come to Baruch Hu, even the Gili in that level. Okay, the second level. And that all comes from the Baruch Shama, that the Amira of godliness comes down in a revealed way, in the Nefesh Elokis.
Our Amira?
It's not clear here. It looks like both ways. It looks like it goes both ways.
The response always makes it happen.
In other words, look, it starts like this. It starts with God, for sure, doing it. The levels. Then we replicate it. By this bonus. Yeah, we replicate it.
And then we put that out more.
And then we bring it down more from God, and that in turn, through that is the Gili Lamata by us, and then the Gili in the world. Yeah, I said that. But here, when Kol Zeh Adei Teis was said,
Up, down, up, down, up, down.
I think it's back and forth. That's really clear here. I have to look in the sources again for that. But let me finish reading the Maimer here. Then I'm going to finish. And according to this, we'll understand what it says. Pirish Tchilas Masecha, eine Ikra Kavona, the Tachlis HaKavona, B'riyas Esav Yisrael, Mishul Ham Shel Gili Eri and Sof Lamata. What is Tchilas Masecha? Pirish, what is the meaning? Not just the beginning of your creation, it's the beginning of the Kavona. The primary Kavona and purpose and intention in the creation of Ikra Kavona. Tchilas Masecha means not the beginning of the Masecha, means the purpose of Masecha. The real purpose. That today is the purpose of your existence, which is the high purpose that there should be the creation and the bringing into being of the worlds in order to bring Gili Eir, reveal godliness below. And this is completed and fulfilled, realized through the work of the souls of Israel, as we discussed before. This is Zeh Hayem today, the Rosh Hashanah Yem Borei Adam Arish, Hu Tchilas Masecha. Not the day when creation happened, because that's not the point. Creation is dark. You want to have the Gili. So that's why Zeh Hayem Tchilas Masecha.
Answering the question, because in the beginning of the
Yeah, exactly. That's his answer. Right? Because it's why is it so it's not Tchilas Masecha? Because this is the day of creation of the human being, first human being. Adam Arish Hu Tchilas Masecha. Shezeu Ikra Kavan. Because that's what Tchilas Masecha. We don't mean the beginning of your handiwork, the actual physical world. We mean the beginning, the purpose of existence. That's Tchilas Masecha. Right. So because the primary purpose of the creation of the worlds, it's interesting. He says ikra kavana, not kavana. That means there is a kavana. Okay, is in order to draw down and transmit the divine infinite light below. But that was currently Yom Rishon, and this is the remembering the first day. Yom Rishon hu ascholos kol ishtalshalos. He said this before. Yom Rishon is referring to the currently Yom Rishon. What did he say? Shadish. Where did he say this before? Yeah, Tchilas Kol Ishlashus, right. The currently Yom Rishon is just like Tchilas Masecha doesn't mean action. It's not just remembering the first day of creation. It's remembering Yom Rishon Ascholos Kol Ishlashus. You're remembering the first day of existence, meaning the first level, Yom, the first Gili. Yom is Gili. The first Gili of existence of Kol Ishlashus b'chinas Harotzen le'elamis. The first desire, the desire for the world b'chinas Harotzen HaPoshet. That first stirring, where God first put things into place. All in order for there to be a Gili down here below. Well, Li is the Rosh Hashanah Mamshich b'chinas Harotzen l'Melucha, and being that Rosh Hashanah we draw down the desire for kingship. Shezeh b'chinas Atzmus Eidei and Sabarachut. That comes from Atzmus Eidei and Sabarachut. Remember, he doesn't have to do it. It's Bereshus Yechelis. That's why Rosh Hashanah is so it's not Rosh Hashanah a technical thing. This day reminds us of the first day of creation. First of all, it reminds us of the Kavana, Tchilas Masecha, the Kavana of creation. And Yom Rishon reminds us of the process that brought this whole thing into place.
Rosh Hashanah can never come out on a Friday.
It's currently Yom Rishon, the B'chinas Ratzon, also B'chinas Ratzon, the Rosh Hashanah, Mamshich B'chinas Ratzon, has currently Yom Rishon. The B'chinas Ratzon Hanal. Shehu B'chinas Chitzein is Ve'ena Be'era B'chinas Atzmus. He said that earlier. He's reminding. So the currently Yom Rishon to that desire, which is only an outer dimension. It's not commensurate to Atzmus. Al Kain Tzrichim Al Zeh Zekaron. That's why you need to remember it. Interesting twist there. That's why you have to remind yourself, because it's not Ikar. It's only an outer dimension.
The worlds, right?
The Ratzon for the worlds.
It's only out of dimension?
Because Be'erech Atzmus, remember, Ratzon is only in the air, it's only Ha'ara.
You have to say the Ikar Kavana.
The The gili is the ikra kavan. The kavan is not the world per se.
Yeah, it's the gili.
It's the gili in the world. Yeah. Al kain tzrichim al zeh zakarna. Well, listen. Nevertheless, we do draw down the memory. We do. What do we conjure up? What do we say? When you remember, you do. What do we say? Retrieve the memory. Al zeh ayidei ratzon lemalucha nimshach ratzon le'elamus. Remember, the ratzon melucha and ratzon le'elamus is not the same thing. Melucha is gili. He wants to. Ratzon le'elamus is when you want a house, you don't want the house. You want the house for you to be able to be present there. But in order, right? Right. So the ratzon le'elamus is a chitzenistic thing compared to the primus hakavana. So you say now there's a cotton al dei ratzon le'melucha nimshach ratzon le'elamus. Because listen, you want to remind, you want God to have the stirring for worlds. You don't just want him to gili. So
it's incidental. You look at this verse.
That should be.
Which is really the gili.
Yeah, right.
Incidentally, like
so to speak. Yeah, exactly. But he needs it. But it does happen.
Right.
You need a revival of the world. Remember, that's what he meant. That when the world is really asleep, right before Rosh Hashanah. Because if you don't have the kavanah of the world. So it's like saying, "So, are you alive?" You say, "Someone's alive." Are you really alive? I say, "Yeah, I'm like a walking dead." You're alive, but you're not really alive. Your purpose, if you're not purpose, a man without purpose is like a person that's half not alive, in that sense of the word. Okay, how's that? And that there should be a gilead. Remember, in the Sava, the gilead should be in tachtenim. The kavanah is in tachtenim. Okay. In other words, it starts in the Sava and Atzmos Tachtenim. That creates Ein Sof, and then through Ein Sof emerges the Ratzon, the stirring for the worlds. That's why I said, if you remember when I spoke about Yisrael, I said, how is Torah and Yisrael and the Sava and Atzmos? There it's all Atzmos. There's no world there. The world is a nivdal, davar nivdal, where the Nesava for all these things plays itself out. This is the meaning the day of Rosh Hashanah, Yom Brei Adam Harishon, the day of creation of Adam, who tchilas masecha ikra kavana, is the beginning of your actions, the primary purpose. The b'chafei be'el nevra elam b'chins chitzenes haratzon. Here you go. On the 25th day of Elul is only the creation of the world, which is only the outer dimension of Ratzon. That's the Ratzon of all those levels. Remember, when we talk about Ratzon, in the levels, we're talking Ratzon for Elamis, not Ratzon for Torah. Or Ratzon for Gili.
It's like looking in the newspaper for an ad.
I think that's a critical component, by the way. That makes a big difference. That change. That's why it has to go through those gradations. That first is Gili Latzmi, not Gili Latzmi. Then there's a Gili Latzmi. Then there's Emer Ve'esa. Because you're talking about bringing a world which is so distant from godliness. Okay. But the inner Ratzon is in souls of Israel. That we draw down Rosh Hashanah. That's the memory of the Yom Rishon. And that is a reminder for the world, that desire for the world, the year begili, and that it should be revealed.
I'm saying with the stillness and spirit of desire. The desire is really chitzenis
that aspect, yeah, absolutely. It's driven by yeah.
Right.
Nimtza yesh hem adreges b'chinas ratzon hapashut. Nimtza yesh hem adreges b'chinas ratzon hapashut. We find from this, or we come out of this, we derive 5 levels. Ratzon hapashut. The first level is b'chinas ratzon hapashut, the simple desire. B'chinas golev gelifu. The second level is the engraving, the shar b'keach. V'hayin b'chinas yechida v'chaya. That's the first level, yechida and chaya. Because Hashara, now that he's envisioning this structure, has some type of relationship with the worlds. The Gimel Madregas La'achra Tzimtzum, and 3 levels after the Tzimtzum. Ve'hein Nefesh Ruach Naran, Nefesh Ruach Neshama. Or Baruch Shamar, what's a Baruch Shamar? Sheyumshech Min Atzmas Li B'chinas Amira V'rotzen. Baruch Shamar is that from Atzmas should be a transmission of Omiras, some type of statement and desire. Ki Achshav B'sos Lusu Talya Milsa. Because now it's dependent on our initiative from below. Here he says clearly. And the primary thing is to transmit the Pnimius Haratzon, the inner desire. Because the outer desire the world has on its own. Remember, he said the outer worlds have it on their own, the Christus Bris, the covenant, and so on. Even that is also dependent. But nevertheless, the outer dimension is there, but it's a weak life. So what's really Rosh Hashanah about? Is to be mamshel the Pnimius.
It's the sixth day.
It's to be mamshel the Pnimius Hashai. Through this should be the revelation below. And this is the drawing down of the desire of kingship on Rosh Hashanah. And for this the soul comes down below to illuminate the darkness of the world. Through the work of contemplation and love and awe, to radiate, illuminate the darkness of the animal soul. And with this we'll understand today, this is the day of Rosh Hashanah, the creation of the man, of human being. The beginning of creation, meaning that's the primary purpose. It reminds us of the Yom Rishon, of the beginning of the stirring, the beginning of the Ratzon of the Elamis. So technically, the actual worlds would function even if no one showed up. The pure, but it would be like totally asleep. A world that's asleep. As it is, it's pretty bad. We're pretty asleep. Closed eyes. Right. The minimum. Okay? That is, because God's stirring, He brought world. The reason He has the world is He wants you to bring light into it. But the minimum will keep you alive and is asleep. Then comes the work of a person. And he awakens the Pnimius Haratzon, the Ratzon from Melucha, that revelation in this world. That in turn wakes up the world. So you're not just having sleepy energy, you have dynamic energy, even the world. Because now the world has purpose. Because you've reminded itself of the purpose. So you remind the purpose, so in a sense, a new surge of energy also travels through the desire for the world, not just for the desire for the revelation.
6 millennium is like Mashiach.
Yeah, for the worlds and for the revelation in those worlds, because that's the purpose, is to reveal in the worlds. Isn't that tremendous? That's how it is. Okay, so we finished Discourse 18. We did chapter 71, page 132 through 134.